Hello and thanks for joining us on News Central Television. This is our special live broadcast of the Angolan elections taking place today. The studios opened at 9 a.m. Luanda time, and we've been bringing you regular updates on the situation there. I'm Gbenga Aborowa.
And I am Rita Omodia. We'll have continuity of the Angola elections. Polls open, just like Gbenga rightly said, at about 7 a.m. local time in Angola. And we have about more than 14 million registered voters supposedly to participate in this election, to put in 220 members of parliament and a president simultaneously. And the question in the minds of people is, will it be a continuity, or will this election bring about change, Gbenga?
Exactly, and that's why we have our experts here, just like we've had all through the day. I would like to use this opportunity to bring in Goncalo Telles. He joins us live from Lisbon, Portugal. Hello, Goncalo, and thanks for joining us.
Hello, good afternoon, and thanks a lot for the invitation.
Now, Goncalo, polls opened this morning in Luanda, and it's also the first time that Angolans in diaspora will be voting. What would you say has been the conduct of the elections so far? Has it been peaceful? What's the turnout like?
The last information I received just before coming here was that the turnout is quite good. There's been no riots, so it's all been quite peaceful. I know that the leader from UNITA, Adalberto Costa Jr., was already re-indicating that some aspects were not aligned. For example, the observers, the National Committee, still had on their lists lots of people that are dead, that are not voters. So that's something that naturally will worry other observers, international observers. But so far the news is good. I think the process has been as peaceful as we can expect.
As peaceful as possible is what we expect, Goncalo. And looking at the two major parties, the MPLA and the UNITA party, MPLA has ruled for about 4 decades in Angola. Now, what do you think it should look like if MPLA loses the election for today?
That's a great question. I think that it's a major change. I mean, it's what you said. MPLA have ruled the country since 1975. I'm almost certain that this will be the closest elections from UNITA since then. I think that the world is watching, and that's important. I think the United States are watching. There's a close eye from international observers, although there's only 2,000 international observers on the ground. But mainly, I think that this factor of the world.
Goncalo? Can you hear us?
Goncalo.
I mean, these are serious issues. MPLA has ruled for 4 decades in Angola, and then we see the UNITA party. I think this is a position where UNITA party has taken pressure or taken the opportunity of the youth, because the youth this time around want change in Angola.
You know, since in my experience of covering elections, I would never call it until it's over. I wouldn't even say or assume that this party, because we get surprises all the time. I remember the Kenyan elections, people thought like it was certain that, you know, for having the backing of the incumbent president, then it should be, you know, business as usual. That William Ruto, that Uhuru
Raila
Odinga would have won, but we can't tell. So I believe Goncalo is back.
Yes, sorry. I think that was the problem with the connection. I hope it's working now.
Yes,
we
much
can.
better.
All right.
Go
on, please. Go on, Goncalo.
No, as I was saying, I hope that if UNITA wins, that MPLA is mature enough to initiate a process of a peaceful translation of power, and I think that will be the main question regarding these elections. They're going to be close. I still think it might be a stretch for UNITA to win, but in case they do so, let's hope that MPLA is mature enough to do that translation of power in a mature sense.
I mean, it's still early days, and we can only speculate here because MPLA has been in power for 47 years. It will be very hard to wrest power from a ruling party. So I don't want us to get too ahead of ourselves. But looking at the geopolitics of how the world works now, Europe is very concerned about energy security. Angola is the second largest producer of oil in Africa, and they're looking for alternative sources to Russia. So do you think the international community, with the little number of observers it has on ground and with what is going on with Russia and Ukraine, would likely take stability, because they get a lot of their oil from and energy resources from Angola, over democracy? Do you think they will put pressure on the MPLA government, to follow really democratic means and ensure these elections are free and fair?
Well, as I said, I think that the international observers on the ground, 2,000 is definitely not enough. I mean, anybody that knows Angola and covered an election there in 2008 and went a couple of times to the country knows that it's a small number of international observers. But I do think that, honestly, I do think that there, again, with the world watching, I think it's in Angola's interest and both parties' interest that the international observers' final assumption of the elections is taken in a good sense. If they say it wasn't a democratic process or this happened, I think it should be taken in account. We know that sometimes in African countries and even in Angola, these things aren't taken in account. But let's hope so. Considering the Russia-Ukraine subject, I think it's a great question. Again, it's quite difficult to see how dependent. I wouldn't say dependent economic-wise, because I don't think that countries like Angola are at all economically dependent from Russia. It's much more about what they mean in terms of armed weaponry, and most of the times not in a good sense, arming militias and all that in the interior of the country. But I do think that there's also good signs from this government, and even if a transition occurs from UNITA, that they will probably want stronger ties in cooperation with the West. I think that a recent agreement that was signed with IMF and also a negotiation that is in standby with the European Union, considering oil and energy, which kind of puts Asia in a second place. And saying Asia, I mean China, which is also a key player in Africa, as we know, probably the major player in Africa, are good signs. That the country might want to intensify its cooperation with the West and leave other continents and other countries not so democratic and not so interesting in other senses in second or third place.
Okay, we do hope for fruitful bilateral relations. Now, if we go back in time, Goncalo, remember in 1992 when the former president, who is late now, who died in July, Eduardo dos Santos, was contesting. He was contesting then with the rebel leader of the UNITA party, that is Jonas Savimbi. Now, how would you categorize these two elections? Are there any differences when you look at this election where MPLA is also battling with the UNITA party and the 1992 elections?
Yeah, I think the comparison makes sense, but I also think that in '92, UNITA had a very different type of leader. I wouldn't say surprised, but I'm not surprised because I've followed him for some time. But I honestly think that Adalberto Campos Jr. is probably the best thing that happened in Angolan politics in decades. I mean, you hear. I was able to hear on CNN Portugal an interview from Adalberto for more or less an hour yesterday, and it was a very good interview because you see a more diplomatic approach. You don't see such a bellic approach, which one could have and which UNITA had in '92. And I do think that is very important in the positioning of UNITA, and that is also very smart. I think he has a very interesting speech when he talks about Cape Verde as example of democracy in Africa, and I think it's a great example for him to give. I also know Cape Verde quite well, and I don't think he owes anything to any European or any other leader in terms of a democratic sense that he wants to impose to the country. Naturally, we know that these things, being Angola is such a complex country, and with so much happening. Sorry, I just lost one of my.
We're with you, Goncalo. Yes.
Yeah, with just saying such a complex country and with so much happening, even with the death of José Eduardo Santos and now the body in the country and his family supporting UNITA, I think there's always a lot he has to deal with, and the outcome is always different of what the desire at the moment is. I think that's yes. Important to state at this moment, and that happened a bit with João Lourenço. But another thing that I think that is interesting with UNITA, again, comparing to '92, is that in a certain sense he says, let's get rid of witch hunt, and it's time to heal. It's time to stop the witch hunt. It was kind of a selective witch hunt from João Lourenço, many people consider, and I think that's why many people in MPLA are also going away from the party or distancing themselves in a certain sense. And I think that's also smart from Adalberto Campos Jr.
Now, Goncalo, let's talk about the late President Eduardo dos Santos. João Lourenço, during the campaign, said Angolans should go out and vote MPLA to honor the legacy of late President Eduardo dos Santos. But if you're looking at the legacy of Eduardo dos Santos, it's quite contentious. A lot of people, the data is there, the evidence is there. They said he supervised a kleptocratic government, that there was a lot of corruption and graft under him. So by appealing to the sentiments of Eduardo dos Santos, will that really work in João Lourenço's favor, knowing that this was such a divisive figure, and some conservative estimates say that $24 billion in oil revenue under MPLA's government with dos Santos is unaccounted for. What do you make of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, you touch at a good point, and I think it's honestly, and I don't like to, as a political analyst, to choose sides here, but honestly, I think it's quite hypocritical of João Lourenço to actually say that at this moment. We know that when João Lourenço took power in 2017, and many people were hopeful that some of the things that he wanted to do and the people that he had to take away from the party, from MPLA, he did it with a stance saying that we have to get rid of the corruption of the decades of power of José Eduardo Santos. So I think it's a bit hypocritical for him to now saying we have to honor the legacy.
Exactly, he's contradicting himself.
It's completely contradictive. Again, Angola is a very complex country in the sense that there's many people still in the country that admire and that have a great respect for José Eduardo Santos' presidency. And I think that's understandable in a certain perspective, because he fought for peace and he maintained the peace. But as you said, I think that all that came after the corruption, the kleptocracy, Angola being a country with so many resources and having such a high level of poverty after so many years, after so many opportunities, it's just quite appalling, because I think, honestly, that MPLA, during the last decades, they had all the chances to do better, to change the country in a certain sense. They didn't diversify their economy. They were very narrow-minded in the whole investment in oil, putting aside the agricultural sense. And it's hard to distance yourself from, to have a distance evaluation and see any positive side in his legacy in that sense, in my opinion.
All right, thank you so much, Goncalo. So many of the legacies of the late President Eduardo Dos Santos, unfortunately, corruption being on the top list. Now, Goncalo, just take a pause for now. I want to take views of our correspondent live in Angola, Noah Ajare. Thank you so much, Noah, for joining us on this special broadcast.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Noah, can you get us up to speed on situations right now in Angola?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. Just about an hour ago, we just received an update by the representative of the National Electoral Commission chairman. And he basically said that the election is ongoing and is going smoothly. But they noticed that there is there's a hitch, and which is the fact that a lot of people are coming to the voting centers without means of identification. Well, those that they have expired ID, or they have photocopies of their ID without original, and that is creating a kind of queues at the polling centers, and a lot of people are not allowed to vote because of that. So as a result of that, they quickly had to make an amendment. They now allow them to vote once you have a photocopy of your ID card, or even if you have an expired ID card, it also allows you to vote. So overall, I think I would commend them for that, for being very flexible in being able to change their position, which was initially that if you don't have a valid and up-to-date ID card, an original one, you cannot vote. Secondly, the election from the various centers that we have checked is quite peaceful. There was no crowd. And the policy of the government that once you cast your votes, you go home, is really making the process smooth, because there are no crowds. So once you vote, you are supposed to leave the center, and because of that, the only people who are at the centers are the electoral officers and those who are about to cast their vote. And the process is very, very simple. Once you get there, at the entrance, they will request for your ID. Once you show them your ID, they will check on their system your name and your details. Once it matches, then they will allow you to vote. So they're actually doing manual voting. They have a paper where you have the list of the 8 parties. So you just go to a place and thumbprint on your favorite candidate. Then you put it in the box. So that's what we have now. Voting is ongoing and it's going smoothly around Rwanda and the yes.
Now, Noah, reports reaching us earlier said the UNITA candidate, Alberto da Costa Jr., had to vote in another polling unit because his name didn't come up on the electoral register at the polling unit he was supposed to vote in initially. Does this cast a doubt on the National Electoral Commission's preparation for these elections? Because not just him, other Angolans to have made that complaint.
Yes, we have received a couple of complaints in that regard as well. But in a nutshell, what I think is that they are putting in their very best to tackle the few hitches that has come up. Now, if you are registered in a province and you go to another province, definitely your name will not come up and you might not be able to vote. So those But even if you go to your own province and your name does not come up, it's not a major thing. It's quite
They're flexible about
not
it.
that skill. So they are still. It's not a perfect system actually. It's not a perfect system because it's manual, and so they have to just wait and check and check and check. So it has its shortcomings here and there, but overall, I think it's going smooth.
Okay, no, I was still looking at situations in Angola. Earlier on, you mentioned the fact that the government told people to cast their votes and go home. But we also know of a movement called Vote and Sit Down, which was spread all over in Angola, that when you vote, you should sit down and defend your votes. So don't you think there'll be an uprising when people are told that once you cast your vote, to go away from the polling units?
Now, what we have on ground is that the opposition has come out clear to say that when you cast your vote, you stay until the results are counted. But the government or the Electoral Commission is saying once you vote, you leave the voting center. Now, if people are staying, you will have crowds at the voting centers. And when you have crowd at the voting centers, when results are announced, and if it does not go their way or the way they want it to go, obviously there will be issues and there might be
but no, when people are not there when the counting occurs, can they say that there have been irregularities when you're not there seeing the counting occur?
I get your point. At all the centers I've visited, it was quite peaceful and smooth, and there were no crowds, simply because those who had voted had left and they have gone home and new people are coming in. But I want to believe that the party agents are there. The party agents are there to supervise. You can see people standing. So party agents have been accredited to stand on behalf of their party to supervise and monitor. So I don't think it is the duty of the voters and the citizens to stand contrary to the directive of the government that vote and go home, to now stand by their votes. So once we have trusted party agents there representing the party, they will be able to, and the media are there. They gave us 100% access. Yesterday we were at the National Electoral Commission, our inspected facility. Yesterday after the national, we went to the provinces and we inspected their facilities. They gave us open access, showed us everything. It was beautiful. So I believe that once the party agents are there, they will be able to supervise on behalf of
irregularities. Thank you, Noah. Noah, at what point should we expect the results? And are there any technicalities involved? Is there any threshold for the candidates to reach before they're declared president? 40 million voters on the electoral register.
Yes, your first question, we are expecting results immediately. Once voting stops, voting is supposed to stop by 4 o'clock. By 4 p.m. today, voting should stop. Once voting stops, they start counting, and they are counting on the spot. You know, when they count, there are collation centers. Sorry to say, there are collation centers. So it is not every center that they count. There are collation centers in each area. So once they vote and they move into the collation centers, they start counting and they declare immediately. But in areas where they have delays and they were unable to vote due to hitches and technicalities, the voting in those areas can be extended, probably till later in the evening or tomorrow. So the chairman of a particular province of the Electoral Commission actually mentioned yesterday that when there are issues in a particular voting center, they could extend voting in that area. But overall, voting should stop by 4 o'clock today, and counting will commence immediately.
No, you said we're expecting the results today or anytime soon. You do recall that Kenyan elections was just a few weeks ago, and it took about 1 week for the results to be announced. So what is Angola doing differently? And why are you so confident that we might get the results soon?
Thank you. Good question. What we had in Kenya is electronic e-voting, which was massively rolled out. But here we're having manual voting. Ordinarily, electronic voting should be faster.
Yes.
So I don't have the hitches, and they now have to delay the announcement. And you're aware of what happened while the Electoral Commission, four of them went against the result that was announced. But here, I think, Kenya has a bit of has its own background
Complications,
complicated issues, yes. But I'm confident here that the result won't be delayed, except in areas where they are unable to vote and voting is extended. So we might not have an overall result for the country by evening, but at least results will start trickling in from the various collation centers.
Okay, so in other words, this manual voting will be much faster than electronic voting. Well, we'll see how that pans out, Noah.
We'll just wait and see.
But Noah, for the election, about 80,000 policemen, I believed, were deployed all over Angola for this election day. How would you rate their presence so far for this election?
Can you come again? I didn't get 80,000.
I said about 80,000 police personnel were deployed all over Angola for the election. How would you assess their presence?
Yes, the country is not militarized. The country is not over-policed. You can walk kilometers. You will see them, but they are not harmed to the teeth. They are not aggressive. You see them at several points. There are no major roadblocks. So we have police presence, but they are not over. There are not too many such that they would create the fear or the apprehension that that we have witnessed in some other countries. And they also allow the military personnel to vote first, so they give priority voting to military personnel. So when military or police officers come to a particular voting center, they allow them to vote first before others will continue. So the country is not over-policed. The country is just moderately policed, and so far it's going well.
I'm glad you shared that. And in the course of discharging your duty, I'm sure you've observed a number of elections on the African continent. This election is looking like it's going to be close. Observers have said, it's the closest in 47 years to having MPLA's rule challenged. And even though it's that close, you're saying it's not heavily militarized and all of that. What lessons, Nigeria elections come up next year in 2023. What lessons do you think other African countries can learn from, the conduct of the Angolan elections? And in what ways, if you have noticed, do you think they can improve on their process?
Okay, thank you. Let me start by saying that the population of Angola is in the region of 30 million or so. While in Nigeria we have over 250 million. Nigeria is more complex with 450 languages, ethnic affiliation, diversity. But here they are more united. They are well colonized here by the Portuguese, such that they are a bit united when it comes.
Noah, can you hear us?
Okay, I think we lost Noah there. We'd like to bring in Goncalo, and in the course of the conversation, we'll get back to Noah. Now, Goncalo, 14 million people have gone to vote today. What would you think is the biggest and most important issue in the minds of the voters in Angola? What do they want to see in the president-elect?
I think the main issue is combat on poverty. I still think there's a big of the population in Angola that still starve. I think I lost my connection.
Yes, we're good. We can hear you. So go on. Go ahead, please.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah,
yes,
we can hear you. Go ahead, please. Hello, Goncalo.
Goncalo, can you hear us?
Yeah, Goncalo, just go on. We can hear you. Okay, we seem to be having some connection issues.
Yes.
With Goncalo, but we'll wait to reconnect.
Goncalo, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, please go on.
Yeah, as I was saying, I still think that the whole starvation part is very important, and I think that was also a smart move by Cup Jr. Yesterday or the day before, where he kind of put in the people's voice, what do you need more, and the answer was something like food, and it's quite, again, I think that is a basic need that Angola needs. A more urgent one, and then an inclusive state. I think that a youth which participates, which has more job opportunities, the unemployment in Angola is tremendous. I mean, when you think about some of the richness of the country, and then that the average person spends €2 per day and lives on that. It's a complete discrepancy between two
Angola is the second largest producer of oil on the continent. They have so much resources, so it's kind of a paradox. So why is there extreme poverty in Angola in the midst of many?
I think one of the main answers is what we spoke about before. Is unfortunately, I think a small group and a kind of kleptocracy took control of the main resources of the country. Another one is that that also kind of is used by MPLA, and it has a certain sense, is that it's not as easy as it seems in Africa to expand these type of richnesses from oils to the population concretely. Obviously, I think they use this in a certain sense as an excuse, but I think that there's also a kind of reasonable sense to it, but it has to occur. I mean, obviously, it's something that can't continue, and that's one of the big differences from Angola to other major African countries, and that surprises people, is so much richness for one side and one of the poorest countries in the world, whilst other African countries, the truth is that most of them, probably 3/4 or more than that, don't have 1/4 or half of the resources that Angola has, and that's been a problem over the last decade since their independence, and it has to change. In my opinion, it has to change, and I think that there's an approach from UNITA, again, to go for a more inclusive state that wants that to change in a broader sense.
Okay, now Goncalo, looking at this manual voting and manual transmission of results and the electronic transmission of results. Now, in most African countries, in Kenya, we saw it being electronical, and still we saw a little bit of delay for the announcement of the election results. Now, what are some of the gains and differences between the manual transmission of results and the electronic transmission of results? Now, Noah said he's confident that even though it is manual, that the results will be gotten on time. Goncalo, can you hear us? Okay, we still need to get Goncalo's online, but in the meantime...
You know, we've embraced technology in Africa a lot, and still people are kind of skeptical to embrace it fully. In Kenya, you had the KIM system, but they said, you know, in case the KIM fails, you should fall back to the manual register. I think Goncalo,
let's hear your view on this.
So, sorry, I only got the last part of your question, but if you could reframe it, because the connection kind of...
All right, we're looking at the manual transmission of results, which is going on in Angola, comparing it to the electronic transmission of results in Kenya. Now, in Kenya, it took about a week before we could see the results, and even after the results, we still have the opposition party of Raila Odinga dismissing this election results. Now, comparing to what is going on in Angola, where we have a manual transmission of results, Noah earlier on said that it would be faster and they would get the results on time. When you're comparing this to manual and electronic transmission of results, how would you think that African countries can do better in a way that we do not have a post-election violence or people dismissing elections results?
It's a good question. Again, I think that it doesn't have a straight answer, because even in the West and in more developed countries, we see the electronic vote occurring and not so many people happy with it. And even now in even recent elections in Portugal, the final results, obviously the projections were on the day, but the final results were also only concluded some days after. So I think there's always a technology gap in Africa, which kind of it has to speed things up so that some things occur in a faster way. I know that in Kenya, you were saying that in Kenya, the electronic vote permitted people to have the results in a few days. Did I get that right?
There was a delay, even though it was electronic. So I get your point. I mean, there's no hard and fast rule to it. Now, Goncalo, looking at the two major political parties contesting for this election, UNITA, that's the Total Union for the Independence of Angola, and the MPLA, the Movement for the Popular Liberation of Angola. Even in their names, you can still tell that these parties that were involved in the struggle to end Portuguese colonialism in Angola. Now, coming to present-day Angola, what's the relationship between Lisbon and Luanda? Is it like the French type when you see a close type of assimilation between the colonial master and the countries, the independent countries, or is it like the British? The British have the Commonwealth Organization. What's Portugal's relationship with Angola like, and does it differ? Do the two parties have different foreign policies, UNITA and MPLA, towards Portugal?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think that in Portugal, obviously we have very strong ties with Angola, and over the past years, I mean, I've noticed that there's a certain special aspect in Angola, which anything can be said all over the world, but whatever is said in Portugal gains a different relevance, and that is very interesting. And also we have many Angolans in the country, which I think fit in perfectly in society, and vice versa. Politically wise, and in terms of political actors, I personally think that for the past few years, there was a tie that was too close from Portuguese politicians to MPLA. I honestly think that we're living in times where naturally diplomacy urges you to have concrete and solid relationships with any government, and obviously the relations between Angola and Portugal, with its history and with its strength, be it culturally, be it socially, politically, in all aspects, has to lay over that. It has to be above that. But I think that in certain aspects, we should have distanced ourselves more with our top politicians from MPLA, especially in the years between 2012 to 2016, 2017, where, as you probably know, Portugal was being interventioned, and we were following a European program. And there was lots of investment here from Angolans, so the ties were very close. And just to finish the subject, one of the things that I actually found out tomorrow, and I was a bit surprised, to be honest, was that our former foreign prime minister, Paulo Portas, and José Luís Arnaud, which is a top lawyer figure in Portugal with businesses in various areas, they were invited by President João Lourenço to be international observers. I still couldn't figure out, and nobody can explain to me through which organization. But honestly, I think that it wasn't a good sign. And I heard the explanations from our
Did they honor that
minister.
invitation? Are they in Angola as we speak?
Yes. And I even heard the explanation from Paulo Portas, which again is a politician that in many aspects I admire. I think he's a pragmatic guy with a good political sense. But his explanation was you can't refuse an invitation from João Lourenço, from the president of Angola, because of the ties with Portugal. But I mean, to me, that doesn't speak, because again, we have a prior foreign minister that spoke about MPLA in 2016 in tremendous aspects, which to me was a tremendous mistake, which was.
So it feels like Portugal is endorsing MPLA. I mean, it looks like it.
But not really imposing MPLA, not really supporting MPLA. I mean, it was a request from the president.
And he honored
could
it.
he have refused it?
Like Goncalo said, he's a smart politician. Yeah.
All right.
No, he is a very smart politician, but I think that you can refuse with a good argument, which he had on his side, which is, look, I'm honored by your invitation, but taking into consideration my past and my ties to your party, I think that it wouldn't be looked upon in a good sense that I'm an international observer in the country. And more than that, I don't think it puts Portugal in a very comfortable position
or
with the power now, because
position.
I know that the current government, in a smart way, in my sense, is distancing itself from having.
All right, Goncalo. We still continue to discuss the relations between Portugal and Angola, but right now, just take a quick pause while we bring in Bernard Akede and Adeshowa Odushoga. Now, Bernard and Adeshowa, can you tell us what the statistics is looking at for these elections?
All right. Well, it's good to have you guys. You are having us. We're having you too. We had started earlier in the day with some of the statistics that we have concerning Angola's elections. Not much has changed from what we have. Now, earlier in the day, we were talking about, first of all, the population of Angola. Those statistics will be on the screen just in a bit. Now, Angola as at 2022, 1st of July, based on what the United Nations gave to us, Angola has just about 35,588,987 people as at that date we mentioned earlier. And then for this election, the registered number of voters stands at about 14.3 million Angolas. Now we're going to come to something. Now this 14.3 million Angolas, I believe, also includes Angolans voting in the diaspora. Now remember, in Kenyan election we talked about diaspora votings, and it's something that many African countries are now trying to put into their electoral system.
Shewa and Bernard, allow me to jump in there. Talking about this diaspora vote, how much do you have the figures of how many Angolans will be voting in the diaspora, and how significant is it?
All right, so according to the Electoral Commission in Angola, we have about over 22,000 voters in Angola, in the diaspora, that will be voting in the Angola election. We have countries like the South Africa, we have countries like France, Great Britain, Netherlands, Germany, Namibia, Portugal, Democratic Republic of Congo, Belgium, Zambia and Brazil. These are some of the countries where we have Angolans who will be voting, who will be deciding who becomes the next president.
So I guess the number of Angolans in Nigeria is quite insignificant then.
Yeah.
Well, Nigeria isn't exactly.
Well, Nigeria wasn't picked. I'm sure it's probably because we don't speak very good Portuguese over here.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think that was a determinant. Another thing to see here is that this is like the fourth election in Angola since Angola decided to run a democratic, country, and then this is like the third one, the fourth one ever since the 2002 civil war in Angola. So another thing is that the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola seem to having a higher hand here, because there's a general notion that states that whoever has the highest seat in the National Assembly or in the Parliament most times often become the president of the country, and then we see that. MPLA in the
yes.
last vote had about 150 seats in general for the National Assembly, while the UNITA only has about 51 seats. And although they increased by about 20 seats, and then while this one decreased by 25 seats, but despite the decrease and then despite the increase, MPLA still looks like it's going to be having another higher hand in this election. But well, MPLA also has experienced like a decrease in the patterns of voters for the election. Like we have in 2017, it was just about 61%, and then in 2012 it was about 70% of votes. So we saw a decline in the number of voters for that particular party. And now that we have a lot of the youth in Angola, tilting towards tilting support for UNITA because of the promises of bringing more employment opportunities, with the unemployment rate about 30% in the country as we have it at the moment. We wait to see the voting patterns if MPLA is going to maintain at that 61%, increase it, or we also see like what we have seen in the past, like a decline in the pattern of voters.
Very true. Now, Gbenga and Rita, I'd like to, if you permit me, I'd like to speak to one of our guests. I'm talking about Noah now. Now, in the course of sourcing for information concerning the elections and trying to get some kind of statistics and data concerning what's going on today's elections, we kind of found out that there's not so much information out there concerning the elections as compared to other elections that we've seen last year in other African countries last year and this year as well. As a matter of fact, most of the information we're beginning to get, or that we have been getting today, has been from certain foreign media, not from local Angolan media. This question is directed to Noah now. Is there a reason? Is this deliberate?
When I was applying to come here, I discovered that they also have issues of fake news and disinformation and all that. The first information that I got online was that there was visa ban, not visa ban. Sorry, there was internet shutdown in Angola. Internet shutdown. So there's a lot of fake news and disinformation flying around, and the media here is open, but at the same time, the most popular media house are state owned. It's more or less like a state owned institutions here. So informations are out, but they are not out the way you have in other countries that you have massive. It is not in that magnitude. But informations are available here and there, but not as surplus as you would have expected. So you are right on that. So I don't think it's deliberate. I just think that the system is state managed more and it's just gradually they are opening up now.
Okay, and well, my follow-up question to that is going to go to Goncalo. Now, seeing as the major media outfit in Angola is pretty much state-controlled, and the information that's coming up from there is not exactly accessible, or rather it's not so clear as compared to what we had in other countries, particularly Kenya, who recently completed their own elections. Is this not going to have some kind of transparency, or is there not going to be some kind of transparency issues as regards following the step-by-step elections? And I'm saying this because you have a good idea of what happened in 2017. Coming to 2022 now, are there going to be some kind of transparency issues if proper information is not made public or is not clear for the public to see? And what you have on your screen now is some of the statistics from 2017, I beg your pardon. Now you see that in 2017 there were about 9,317,294 registered voters and also voter turnout put together. And then the invalid or blank votes came up to 275,125. The total votes cast in the last election 2017 is 7,093,002. Of course, we're expecting that the numbers will be higher this year. But again, if there's not enough transparency, who's to say that there's going to be a lot of complaint as to some kind of, some kind of funny nature or funny stuff going on behind closed doors. So that's one issue that we've been having actually.
Now, Bernard and Shewa, in the data center, it's nice to know that you guys are there. But there's a name that is missing on that list. I guess you can't fit everyone on the ballot in that screen. Her name is Florabella Malakas. She's the only female running in this year's elections. We had a Martha Karua moment in Kenya. There was a Karua wave that didn't quite pick up, but they're in the Supreme Court now. So my question to you is, what are Florabella's chances?
Well, yeah, part of the reason why she's not on the screen is because, well, the numbers that she's been gathering or that she has gathered based on the information that we have are not exactly that that high.
Also, I think this is a 2017 general elections. This is a
Yeah, this is
okay,
2017
I see. Thank you very much.
But you know, looking at this, does it mean that the rate of women participation in Angola politics is quite low? I wonder if Goncalo or Noah can help us with that. What's the rate of women participating in politics in Angola? Goncalo, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you
Do
hear me?
women play a significant role in Angolan politics, and how active are they?
Yeah, I think that it's what you said. They're not very active, and I think that it's important that they definitely start to be active. There are some big figures even in other African countries like Samora Michel, his wife.
Yes.
And I think that naturally, with democratization, I think other things come. So I'm kind of hoping that also occurs with some change. Again, the one aspect that I didn't mention that I think is important is even, and I think it's a stretch to believe that UNITA might actually win this. But even without UNITA winning with a very close result, which everybody is calling, I think there will be much more pressure. I mean, obviously there was already pressure in 2017, but there will be much more pressure for a different Angola, and I think that's important also because. Whoever wins and being it in Pela, they won't be able to run from this factor. And with that will come, hopefully, more participation of women in politics, definitely.
Okay, Goncalo, from what you're saying, it seems like the UNITA party is playing more of the strings on the youths. And no, I don't know if you're still with us, but when you went to the polls, what is the participation? When you look at the percentage now, women, youths, or elderly people, I mean, the two major presidential candidates are about 68-60, I believe, for the two presidential candidates. So what's the percentage? Do we have more youths? Because it seems this is a string that the UNITA party is trying to pull.
Yes, and it's a small string because that's the great thing about countries like Angola is that the average ages are low comparing to countries in Europe like mine, like Portugal. So I think that the big ends of population are there. But there's one thing about I think lots of people are concentrating on the fact that Adalberto Campos Jr. and UNITA speech is more appealing to youth, and it might be in a first sense, but I honestly think that it's more appealing transversally. I mean, when you see key figures from MPLA like Marcelino Moko, I hope I don't say his name bad out of his name now, but when you see them transferring from one party to the other, you all notice that there's also an older generation that naturally have the civil war more present and that have a bigger acknowledgement for MPLA's peace, for its peace accomplishments and for maintaining peace. But they're also kind of willing for change. So that's one of the things that I'm quite interested in looking is, will UNITA go beyond the youth, and how beyond will it go? Because, again, looking at Adalberto Campos Jr.'s speech, I think it's transversal. I don't know. I don't think it only speaks to the youth, honestly. Yeah.
Now, Goncalo, just before we conclude our conversation, I know you're not a magician and you don't have a crystal ball in front of you, but from what you've seen and your understanding of Angolan politics, what would be your prediction for the outcome of this presidential elections? Where do you think it will land? No, you're not putting any money on it, so it's fine.
No.
You know, I could actually bet what his answer will be, but go on, Goncalo.
I don't want to be wrong here because unfortunately I predicted Donald Trump would be elected in 2016.
Okay, so your record is not quite great in predicting outcomes.
All right.
No, I predicted it well, but against my will, and it came up. No, but I think honestly, I think that there's an important factor here that I think might make it happen for MPLA, which is there's also some of the population, from what I hear from international observers and people on the ground, is that with all this sense of how I see it about Trump Jr. and all that, they I don't say that they see him as there's sums of the population that see him as a foreigner, but they don't see him as a true Angolan. Not only because of the color of the skin, but a sort of Cape Verdean background. And that might weigh in
their choice
in certain rural areas. I'm not so sure. So
okay, thank you very much, Goncalo Telles. We'll let you go here. Thank you very much for your time and contribution. Obrigado. And I'll also like to say thank you to Noab Ajare. We'll definitely keep in touch with you as you give us updates on the situation in Angola.
And of course, Bernard and Shewa, they gave us statistics there talking about the MPLA having about 150 parliamentary seats so far, while that's in the previous elections, while the Unity Party had about 51. And it's quite funny, Ben, I don't know if you're still with us, that in the previous election in 2017, we saw late Eduardo dos Santos actually putting Joao Lourenço as his successor. But right now, unfortunately, Dos Santos is not alive. We don't know how exactly the support will be at this point in time for the MPLA.
And I'm sorry too that they're breaking your heart again with statistics on Madame Florabella, because you're a champion of women in politics, but unfortunately, it looks like chances in these elections are too slim and none.
Yes, definitely. Really slim and none. But right now, let's take a quick break and we'll leave you with sights and sounds of what is going on at the Angola election. Do stay tuned.